It is early 2026, and a Nasdaq listed company is under pressure. Its stock has been sliding for months, and a new kind of fear is spreading through the industry that artificial intelligence, specifically the kind coming out of labs like Anthropic, is about to make its products obsolete. Investors are nervous. The narrative is turning against the entire industry. And then the company's CEO does something he hasn't done in more than 5 years. He walks into the open market and spends $10 million of his own money to buy shares of the company he leads. The news moves fast. Financial media picks it up within hours. Social media amplifies it. Analysts at JP Morgan call it, in their words, a substantial vote of confidence. The stock pops 5% that same day. 3 months later, the stock is up roughly 120%. If the CEO's purchase was meant to inspire confidence, it worked. Maybe a little too well. It would be easy to package this as a clean lesson. When the CEO buys, you buy too. But that skips past something important. This CEO is not just another guy with a brokerage account, and once you understand what he actually controls, the story looks different. Nothing here is financial advice. Think of it instead as a framework for reading a very specific kind of headline more carefully. Let's start with the person at the center of the story. We all know CEOs get paid well, but this one is amongst the best paid CEOs in the world. In 2023, his total compensation came out to about $151 million, making him the second highest paid CEO in the United States that year. Sundar Pichai, who runs Google, earned about $8 million that same year. Nikesh Arora was earning more than 17 times what the head of one of the largest companies on earth was making. He has something else in common with Pichai though. Before joining the cybersecurity company Palo Alto Networks, he spent years as a senior executive at Google. Over that career, Arora built up serious wealth. Most estimates in the middle of 2026 put his net worth somewhere between $1.5 and $1.8 billion. So, when a man worth close to $2 billion spends $10 million buying stock, the first question worth asking is, how big of a bet is that? Really? Let's do the math. $10 million against a net worth of say $1.6 billion is well under 1% of everything he owns. That is not nothing, but it is also not a bet the house moment. Here's a way to feel that number in your gut. If a wealthy friend earning $100,000 a month mentions he just put $1,000 into some new investment, would you treat that as a major life decision? Probably not. And here's where it gets more interesting. Arora wasn't buying into this company for the first time. He already held a stake worth around $150 million before this purchase. Against that existing stake, the new $10 million is roughly 7%. So now you have to ask the real question. Why make this investment at all? It's under 1% of his net worth and under 7% of the position he already held. Think about it like this. You have a friend who already owns 10,000 square feet of land in a growing neighborhood. One day he tells you he's making a move. He's buying another 500 square feet right next to what he already owns. Do those numbers suddenly feel familiar? On one level, your friend is being completely honest. But why only add 5% to what he already owns? There's something he isn't quite saying. And to understand it, we need to ask what he actually stands to gain beyond the 500 square feet itself. Nikesh Arora is not just another investor who happens to like Palo Alto Network stock. He is the CEO, which means a large share of his future pay in bonuses, stock grants, and performance incentives is already tied directly to where the stock price goes. In other words, whether he bought $10 million of stock or not, he already had a massive financial stake riding on this company's future. So here's the sharper question. Is a $10 million purchase really a new signal about how he feels? Or is it a small addition sitting on top of an already enormous, unavoidable position? There's a second order effect worth noticing too. If the stock price rises because the purchase itself generates confidence, that doesn't just benefit the $10 million he spent. If the stock rises by 10%, that $10 million doesn't just become $11 million. The $150 million stake he already held also grows by roughly $15 million. A small, visible purchase can end up amplifying the value of a position that was already enormous. Now go back to your friend and his 500 square feet of new land. That new purchase isn't really a fresh bet on the neighborhood. It's a top-up. And if it gets others in the area excited enough to start buying, that excitement also raises the value of the 10,000 square feet he already owned. Here's the difference though. Your friend is just one guy. He can't move an entire neighborhood sentiment by himself. So why does it work differently when the person doing the buying is a CEO? Ordinary investors don't usually have inside knowledge of a business or deep expertise in its industry. CEOs have both. But the bigger difference is that a CEO's investment decisions get read as messages whether he intends them that way or not. Imagine, hypothetically, a CEO decided to buy stock in a direct competitor instead of his own company. Even if that were allowed, the market would read it as a signal that he doubted his own company's chances. Or imagine he puts none of his money into his own industry at all. That too would get read as a signal, maybe that he saw the whole industry declining. CEOs are also public figures whose trades often have to be disclosed. When Arora bought his shares, the purchase became a public filing soon after, something reporters and analysts could see and write about immediately. That visibility cuts both ways. It makes it hard for a CEO to quietly sell stock and diversify his own money the way an ordinary investor could. But it also hands him real power to shape a story. When a CEO buys and stays silent about why, that silence doesn't stay empty. It creates space for the market to fill in its own explanation. That's part of what happened here. Once the purchase became public, the explanation the market settled on was simple. The man who knows this business better than anyone just bet on it, so it must be worth betting on. But even a CEO with real conviction can't be certain which story wins, so going all in would be reckless. Instead, he hedges. A meaningful but survivable amount. If the stock takes off, the explanation gets rewritten after the fact, and people say the CEO knew something the rest of us didn't. But did he really? If Arora had been certain his purchase would help send the stock up over 100%, why stop at 10 million? He was sitting on a net worth north of $1.5 billion. Certainty of that scale would justify a much bigger bet than the one he made. Which leads to the real question underneath all of this. What does a CEO actually know better than the rest of us when he decides to buy his own company stock? To answer that, we need to break down what actually moves a stock price. Stock price equals earnings per share, the profit a company makes divided across every share of stock, multiplied by the price to earnings ratio, which is simply how many dollars investors are willing to pay today for each dollar of those earnings. As a CEO, you have real influence over one half of that equation and almost none over the other. You can push on execution, drive revenue growth, and manage margins. You don't control those factors completely, but a capable CEO knows where to direct the company's resources to move earnings in the right direction. The price to earnings ratio is a different animal. That number is set by the market, by interest rates, by investor sentiment, by how much growth investors are willing to pay up for at any given moment. A CEO's influence over it is indirect at best, mostly through the story he tells and how much confidence the market has in it. Palo Alto Networks shows just how much that number can swing. Its price to earnings ratio was in the 40s in 2024 when the market was skeptical of the business. Today it sits well north of 300. That isn't a company that got 6 times more profitable in 2 years. That's a market that decided to pay a dramatically higher price for the same dollar of earnings. Which means that even with total conviction about where earnings are headed, a CEO still cannot know how the market will price those earnings a year or even 3 months down the line. A CEO can sound confident in interviews, convince investors his growth plan will work, argue a new threat won't hurt the business the way people fear, and buy his own stock as a costly public signal that he means it. Yet, none of that guarantees an outcome. A CEO's purchase of his own stock is a partially informed bet, not a guaranteed signal. He may have real conviction about the earnings side of the equation. He has almost no control over the other. The next time a headline tells you a CEO just bought millions of dollars of his own company's stock, resist the urge to jump straight to, is this bullish? Pause and ask 3 sharper questions instead. Who is this person and how big is this purchase relative to everything he already owns? How much exposure did he already have riding on this company before he bought a single new share? And of the 2 things that actually move a stock price, earnings, and the multiple the market assigns to them, which one does he actually control? The real edge in investing doesn't come from reacting to a headline. It comes from understanding the mechanics sitting underneath it. Now let's go back to where we started. Palo Alto Networks stock went up roughly 120% in the 3 months since Arora made that purchase. And its price to earnings ratio didn't just hold steady while the stock climbed. It expanded too, from 140 in March 2026 to more than 300 in July 2026. That detail matters more than it looks. Remember the equation. Stock price is earnings per share multiplied by the price to earnings ratio. If the multiple itself nearly doubled, a huge share of this rally came from the side of the equation Aurora never controlled in the first place. The market deciding to pay far more for the same dollar of future earnings. I want to be careful here because it would be easy to call this a happy ending and move on. One good outcome doesn't prove a rule. A stock going up after a CEO buys shares doesn't make insider buying bullish as a general law. It means this particular bet in this particular case worked out. What it actually leaves us with is a sharper question I'm not fully answering today. What specifically triggered this move, and how much of it was the CEO's own doing versus everything else that happened afterward? If Aurora had known with total certainty that this stock was about to more than double within 3 months, would $10 million have been anywhere close to what he put in? Almost certainly not. Which tells you something about the gap between conviction and certainty, and why even the person closest to a business is still making a bet, not reading a guarantee. I can't offer financial advice, but I can help you understand technology, finance, and human behavior a little more clearly. If that's useful to you, consider subscribing. I'm grateful for your time and attention. See you next time.